Does the EcoFlow RIVER Pro live up to all of the hype that you've probably read about? If that's what you want to know, you're in the right place. Hello, I'm Wanderer001 and this is my review of the EcoFlow RIVER Pro. This is the River series from EcoFlow, so this is going to be their smaller portable power station, solar generator, however you want to call it, but this is their mobile version. First, we're going to start off with general construction of the RIVER Pro and then get into all the bells and whistles that you're probably here to find out about. The RIVER Pro itself is made up of matte black plastic all around. It does collect fingerprints and dust, as you can see there, because depending on where you have this. On the top, we actually have a different toned or silver gray handle, which is built right in, as you can see right here in the corners. Those are caps. This is screwed in. It's very, very sturdy. You're not gonna worry about that breaking on you. The front of the RIVER Pro has your light, your display, which we'll talk about later. Ports, more ports, again, later. Coming around to the side, you've got a fan, output ports, and then right here, this is part of the reason that I actually purchased the RIVER Pro over some of the other River options, and that is the RIVER Pro has an expandable battery port right here. So you can expand the overall capacity of your RIVER Pro. Well, we'll put that back into place for now. Coming around to the back, really nothing to look at. It's just little EcoFlow branding, and then even there, slightly two-tone, different black matte plastics. Around to our side here, this is going to be our charging ports as well as an intake fan right there. And on the bottom, again, nothing really to look at. You have some rubber feeties to help lift this off of whatever surface that you have it on, as well as to help keep it in place. The rubber feet, if you have this on a slippery surface, do kind of add a little stability to it. Now you can see me kind of moving this around behind the camera here, and that is because it is reasonably lightweight for what it is. And the overall weight of the RIVER Pro here is actually 16.9 pounds as seen here. But if you also add in the charging cable, which because with something like this, you need to be able to charge it. There are several different ways to charge it, but the primary way you're probably going to charge this is using that included power cable. And when you factor all of that together, it comes up to a whopping 17 pounds. If you're looking for maximum portability and maximum charge efficiency, this is gonna be pretty good for that, just based on what you get there. Now, I mentioned that it comes with a charging cable. It also does come with extra peripherals in the box. So aside from your charging cable here, which is reasonably sized for its length, you also have a charger for cigarette lighter. Back in the day, that's what we called the car adapter there. And then extra, we'll talk about that in a moment. It also comes with MC4 solar connectors, but I have those on a solar panel because MC4s are really hard to take off if you don't have the right tool. If you know of a good tool, let me know in the comment section below. But those are attached to a solar panel that I won't be removing. So you get a lot of extras with this in the box, and that's really good because, well, some other companies don't do that. Now, the battery capacity without the extra battery is 672 watt hours. Now I know that might be confusing. It was a little confusing for me because you're going to see a lot of watt hour output, watt hour input. Just think of that 720 watt hour battery. That is the size of what you get in this. Now, once we start talking about outputs, that can change dramatically based on what output you're using. This would be a good time to start talking about some of the things we have on the front. Right over here on the left, you have a LED light. If I turn that on, you have two different levels of brightness as well as an SOS strobe. I'll quickly turn that off. You'll notice that the LCD panel on the front popped on. That's great because this is one of the key factors of EcoFlow that I really like, and you probably will too, but we'll touch on that a little later. Right down here, and if we zoom in a little bit, you have several types of USB ports. You have your USB-C 100 watt port. This is really good if you have something like a MacBook or USB style computer charger. Then you have two USB-As, which are not quick charge, and then one fast charge USB-A port right here. So you can load up all of your cell phones right here, not have to worry at all. Right under our light, we have our IoT reset. What that is actually the way that you can communicate to the EcoFlow RIVER Pro here via an app. Over here on the right hand side, you'll see that there is a little flap covering, again, your what I call the cigarette or the DC output, and your DC output can be 13.6 volts or 3 amps. And for any of these, you'll notice that you have to toggle it on before it actually becomes usable. Now, what I do like about the toggles, actually what I like about that port cover right there, is it sinks itself very nicely into the actual DC port there. But you'll notice these are really easy to see. It's a bright white. Even if you're outside, that is still very visible to you. So you'll always know when that's on or off. You might have noticed in my review, and if you've seen any other reviews, you don't hear them beeping. If you have this and you're watching this after the fact to kind of familiarize yourself with this, you'll notice yours are beeping. Those can be turned off in the application. Again, talk about that a little later, but just know you could turn those off and help keep things nice and quiet. We're gonna come around to the side here. And again, we talked about the port cover for our expanded battery capacity here. One of the things I like about this is you actually have screws that will tie in and hold the cable in place. You don't have to worry about accidentally separating them. If you have the extended battery, which I don't, wish I did, but I was looking for future-proofing, which is why I got this model, so maybe in the future I can have the extended battery. If you get the extended battery, your 740 watt-hour capacity of your River Flow is expanded to 1440 watt-hours. You are almost doubling the capacity of your River Pro. And it's almost the same form factor and size. Again, the port cover I like, it's nice, it's rubber, it fits into place and comes off very easily. Here we have 3 AC outlets, and again right here, power button, tap it on, now they're activated. Anytime you want to use something, you have to turn it on first. I like the fact that they have the little ground spacer there, even though they don't really do anything. Placement is nice. I haven't had any issues really with most plug types. However, if you want to have more things plugged in, if you don't want to just have 3, you can always pick up something like a extender or a power strip, plug it in here, and then you can have more situated. The output for our outlets here is 600 watts. Now, again, not to be confused with battery capacity. Now we're talking about output for these things. So what you're going to be looking at is, does a device that I have output under 600 watts, meaning the draw that that particular piece of equipment needs is under 600 watts. And it took me a little time myself to figure out if you're not really into this. The River Pro, through the EcoFlow app, has something that is called X-Boost. Will allow you to use things that draw more power, more than that 600 watt. It will allow you to use things that draw up to 1800 watts of power. Myself, I've got mixed feelings about that, and we'll talk about that a little later, but there's a reason why it can do that, and it's both a plus and a minus. Topic for a later discussion. Up here, we have the fan. Now, the fan itself is how the unit stays cool depending on the load or the maximum amount of power that's being drawn out of the device. That increases the internal temperature of the battery. So you need a nice cooling fan. Enter our cooling fan here. That also includes when you're rapidly charging the internal battery, there is going to be a heat buildup. So the fan is very important. The fan has 2 different speeds. One is a variable speed based on the actual load and draw, and then there's a max speed. If you're using the variable speed fan, I will say it's very easy to keep this around. It's not going to overpower any sound. So if you're using this in a tent or outside, you're not going to notice it. Even if you're charging it right by where you're watching TV, you're not going to notice it. If you turn the variable speed off, you are going to notice that winding sound from it. It is not terrible in any way, shape, or form, but it is very noticeable, so I want you to be aware of that. As you can hear from these 2 samples, Now, we talked about that there was nothing on the back here, so we're going to come around to our charging side. And on our charging side, we have our giant intake for the fan on the other side so that it helps draw and keep things cool. And now we actually have our inputs up here. The one thing with the inputs, they are hidden by a door. The door is pretty flimsy. The only reason it's actually kind of sticking is because I have the unit on its side. If you have the unit in the correct placement, it just kind of flops around. I'm really actually worried about breaking this off. I do wish that it comes up and pushes in. I wish they would have done something like that, but it's not, again, terrible in any way, shape, or form. Right here, you have your plug for the charger, which comes with it. You saw it. It's just a single cable, which is really good because it doesn't need an inverter brick. It's just a power cable. You plug it in here. You have maximum of 100 to 120 volts. You have that, which you have your charging cable right there. Plug it in. Good. You have your reset if you ever overload the unit, which I've done in testing. You have a grounding wire if you are so inclined to do so. And then you have your input for either your solar or your DC car. If we're looking at maximum inputs, you are looking at 12 watts or AC charging over here of 660 watts, and then solar charging back over here of 200 watts. Now, EcoFlow does sell a 110 watt solar panel and a 200 watt solar panel, but these are our charging ports. And again, the kind of really flimsy door, wish they would have done something a little better with that. But let us come back around to the front of the device, and we are going to zoom in on our panel, because this panel is why you're getting this device. And here you can kind of see all the fingerprints from me manhandling this. This is going to be one of the most informative displays that you're going to find on these types of devices. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of others where it's like, here's your input, here's your output, and a % battery level left. If we start turning things on and off, here, if I turn on the DC, you will get an icon letting you know car is on. If I come over to the side and I turn on my wall outlets, here, it's letting you know. You have a total runtime remaining indicator right there. So based on 81%, I have 99 hours if I just leave it on like this. Once you start plugging things into this, the numbers here dynamically change to let you know based on the draw that is happening. And then you always have a % wheel in the middle letting you know your battery capacity. You have your maximum watt output and your maximum watt input. So again, it's letting you know all of these things. Anytime you start turning on different functions, here you can see it's talking to my phone right now, so that's the app connection. You also see I have UPS right there, which is an uninterrupted power supply. While you can use this for an uninterrupted power supply, it is not recommended for sensitive equipment because the changeover is not fast enough as you would get with a dedicated UPC that's built for sensitive electronics like computers and Wi-Fi networks and things of that nature. But this display, even though it might look like it's flickering a little bit in the camera, it is not. It is steady, it is bright. It can be seen outside, but you kind of have to angle it around a little bit. The blue does make it a little tricky to see, but all of these lights, all of this information was one of the major factors that I chose this over some of the competitors. Now, there's a lot of readouts that you can get from this display itself, and the functionality of this unit can be almost 100% done through just the buttons on the River Pro. However, one of the extra features that EcoFlow has over competitors is the inclusion of an application. So let's actually take a look at the application for EcoFlow as it pertains to the River Pro. This is the app for the EcoFlow battery power system. My particular power station that I will be using this for is the River Pro right here, but your EcoFlow app is going to look very similar regardless of which EcoFlow product you have. I'm going to come up here to the right hand corner really quickly, and if you press the plus sign there, you get to pick what EcoFlow product you have. It is letting you know that you will need to have your Bluetooth turned on in order for that to work. And then over here you have a little picture of a person. Selecting that will bring you into your account settings. So here you can change the name of the account. You can change your overall temperature settings. You have your notifications. Do you want to be notified or not? You have your language settings right there. And then other down here, which is firmware, which is a great thing with the EcoFlow products. They will constantly get better with firmware updates to the machines themselves. You also have a help center. You have network diagnostics, which will kind of help you figure out what's wrong with the network. You have about, which will tell you the firmware version of your EcoFlow product. And then you have right here, check for updates. And right there, I'm all up to date. So that's the accounts area for the EcoFlow app. Coming back to the main page, if you already have an EcoFlow product attached to your account, you will see it listed there with its name and then a battery % level right there. In my case, I'm doing this after lots and lots of testing. It's at 10%. Selecting into it will show us lots of information. Starting at the top, you have your battery indicator. So right there, it's letting you know, hey, this is really low. As this tops off, it will change color and be green. So here you have on the side, full and empty. indicating 10%. Left-hand side indicating actual temperature of the device. Remember, if it's too hot, the batteries will not charge as quickly. So knowing your temperature is great. Also, it shows you if anything is plugged in, just like you would see on the screen. If I had something plugged in, it can run for 99 hours right now, but once you plug something in, that number dynamically changes. Here we can see an indication of output and input. So if I bring it over to input, you will see you have a charging level right here, letting you know, well, what's your maximum input up here, and then whether that's coming from solar, AC, or the extra battery. And then this is actually a graphical chart, which is more useful when you actually have something plugged into it. Selecting output, which is where we started on, you have very similar. Right here, you have a chart that will show you the output leaving the device. Currently, I don't have anything turned on. You have your X boost mode on and off. So what that will do is allow you to utilize things that would overdraw the unit by powering them down or dropping the wattage that's pulled. So X boost is a great way to kind of get around some things that might not work with the power station. And then you have buttons that will turn things on and off. So right there, I turned on the outlets on my device. And then here we have our light. Do we want to turn our light on? Do we want it bright? Do we want it met? Or do we want that? So simply toggling that, which you might see over here, if I turn it up brighter, you can kind of see, if I turn off one of my spots, turn on the SOS, you'll see it blinking slightly off camera. So the ability to do that from the application itself, and then you saw watt output change. The ability to do that from the app itself is very good if you have your power station placed in an area that you can't access relatively easily. And then here we have on-off button for our DC. And then right down here, if you have anything coming from your USB-C, AA, or the fast port on here, it will let you know those wattages right here. So a lot of data right there, but this is not only for data information about your power station. Up here in the upper right hand corner, you have a sprocket or a cog icon. This will allow you to do extra stuff for the power station. Remember I said those firmware updates will constantly make it better? This is where a lot of that's gonna come from. So up at the top, we can rename our power station. We have our charging levels. Let's say you wanna keep your battery capacity at full charge under 80% to try and extend the life of your battery. Well, here's how you can change that. Just toggle that to where you'd like to charge and then hit confirm. What that will do is as you charge up to full, what will get considered full instead of being 100% could be 80%, could be 85%, and then it'll let you know it's done charging. Here we have our car input. Selecting that will allow you to change anywhere from 4 amp to 8 amp. Here we have our AC slow charging. What this will do is one, help keep the fans from cycling on when you're actually charging your particular unit, in my case the River Pro, but what this will also do is not rapid charge your device, meaning that 0 to 80% that you're gonna get in about an hour with the River Pro, well, it'll take longer, but it also doesn't degrade the batteries as quickly using the slow charge over the fast charge. So keep that in mind. It's a, how do I want to use this device? And that's the thing. They're giving you the options so that you can use the device as you see fit. What do you need it for? Do you need it to charge really fast? Do you need the batteries to last a long time, meaning years, or do you need rapid deployment of electricity faster? So that's what that option is. Here we have our DC mode. Currently I have it on auto, but you can change that for solar recharging, car recharging, or nothing. So I'm just gonna leave that alone as it is. Beeping. This is probably gonna be one of the things that you turn off first, because if you watch a lot of YouTube reviews, just like I did before I went out and I got this, you notice that the River Pro or the EcoFlow product isn't actually beeping. And that's because they come in the app and turn that off. Because it's nice the first couple of times that you use it to know when you're pushing something that you get that audio response back, but after a while you don't need it anymore and you want to turn that off. So here's how you turn that off. Here we have our auto fan speed. So I have that on, meaning as the unit gets hotter or as it's drawing more power to charge itself, the fan will automatically kick up and make itself faster. Coming down, we have our unit timeout. So, hey, you want to preserve your battery? How long before the unit shuts itself completely off? Right now I have it at 2 hours, but you can do it from never to 30 minutes. Screen timeout. So again, is the screen on the front of it timing out too quickly for you? Well, you can come in here and change that anywhere from 10 seconds to never. If you really need it to stay on, you can do about 30 minutes, which will help preserve the battery rather than it having never turned off. And then here we have the AC timeout. So those plugs on the side, how long do you want to leave them on before they cycle themselves off? Well, again, Anywhere from 2 hours to 24 to never. Everything is customizable with your unit. That is why it's really cool to have an application that connects to something like the River Pro. And then, just like we had in that other location, we have our firmware, which we check just for our singular device as opposed to an overall if you had multiple devices on that other page. You have a help center, and then you have specifications. Again, for your particular unit, and then you can unlink your unit right from here if you wanted to. That was the EcoFlow application for the River Pro. There you saw the fact that the application allows you to control things through it as well as firmware. Firmware is important. You don't think about firmware for something like this, but that means that the EcoFlow River Pro here is constantly going to be getting better as EcoFlow makes small tweaks and changes, whether that's for things like optimizing fan speeds for temperature or regulating specific outputs. This will continue to get better for the life of the unit. The one downfall that I tested with the application itself as it pertains to the River Pro here is that you need a data connection. You might have seen some people say you need Wi-Fi to use it. You don't need Wi-Fi. You just need a smartphone that can connect to data. What I did was I drove out into Harriman State Park. Even alongside the road, there's places in there you have zero connection at all. Took the River Pro out, tried to connect to the app, couldn't do it. If you have a cellular connection and no Wi-Fi, you can connect to it, but just know if you're looking for like off the grid stuff, you're not going to be able to do some of those cool things with the application unless you drag this into town and get some Wi-Fi. That's not to say it's bad. It is a data point for you when looking at this unit. Now you, like me, probably want to know, hey, what are the things that I can run with this? And EcoFlow on their website does kind of give you a laundry list of things that you can run with your River Pro here. As any good YouTuber, I ran a bunch of tests. So here we're going to take a look at some of the tests that I ran with different things that you might use around your house in a, hey, I have no power, I want to be able to power things, or I'm going camping, let's take some stuff with me. So let's take a look at that now. Charging a smartphone outlet on the side. So here we go, is drawing 20 to 19, and I can do 38 to 40 hours worth of charging and put it into our USB-C port here. Gonna get us about the same small standing fan right there, and that is low. So we can do 15 hours on low, medium, and high. So we can do a standing fan on high for about 11 hours. All right, this one's a little trickier to film, but I'm actually going to use the EcoFlow to power my two spotlights that I use for filming. Turn on one, and turn on two. And there I can keep both my spots going for about 14 to 15 hours. Now this is an important one, and why you want one that has the pure sine wave coming from your electrical right there, and that's to actually use your computer. Well, at this output, I can get 5 hours for my powerhouse of a older laptop, but I also started up a game, and if we kind of pan tilt over there, you can see there's the laptop and my game, how much power is being drawn just standing around. One of the things about having a screen like this and knowing the exact hour down to the minute of how much power you have left in your solar generator here is that if you're running this down and you are using it for gaming or for rendering videos or doing work, you don't want it to cut power in the middle of your project and lose everything. So being able to eyeball that, constantly knowing just how much power you have left, is super important for something like this. All right, and here we have a hairdryer. All right, so the high setting did tap it out, but we can always come in and reset. And here we have a heat gun. And then going up to high. And you can see it overloads, turns the side off. So we come in here, tap for reset, and then we turn it back on. And heat gun with X boost. So low, which was no problem before, but now you can see I can do the high now without it tripping. Only good for 1 hour. but the fan has definitely kicked up some power tools before there was actually anything considered Energy Star. So, handled the jigsaw just fine. And an old school power drill. Let's go. I can do that for 3 hours on full. Next we have a small space heater, and we will turn on just the fan, which is fine. Do low heat. All right, so even low, it kind of capped it out. And then we will turn on the X boost for the small space heater and crank it right into the low. So it is blowing hot air, but the EcoFlow here is keeping its wattage down. It's capping it at around 600. I'm gonna see if I can tap it up to high, see what happens. Yeah, trying to do high, it's just trying to keep the wattage down so low. You can see it's sneaking it up, but it pretty much isn't blowing air out of the fan anymore. It's just heating up those coils. So this might be a little tricky to see, but we're going to use a stand mixer off of the EcoFlow here. So you can get about 7 hours on full if you absolutely need those cookies. Lighting's not great down here, and I'm trying to keep that out of view, but Wi-Fi router, TV, and a streaming box all plugged into the River Pro here. Depending on size of your TV and what you're streaming, here you can see 12 hours of TV watching and internet with no power. Now, in order to make sure this stand-up freezer behind there would go on, I left the door open for a while. So let's see if this will actually work, so my wife does not kill me for running tests. All right, so it overloaded. So the initial draw for this old freezer was too much for the River Pro to handle without X Boost. So we're gonna turn on X Boost and see if it will start the freezer up. All right, so it's a little too much for the EcoFlow here. Even with X Boost, it times it out. So there we have a wide variety of random things that I have around my house to see if they will run on the River Pro here. What I want to talk about next is charging. And we're gonna come back over to our charging panel, popping it up right here. Because running devices in your house is great, but you need to know how quickly you can get this back up and operational, especially if you're in a situation where you're without power. Now, if you have power, you can always use the quick charge power right here, and you'll be able to get, in my case, I tested from 10% and was able to charge up to 91% in 1 hour. And then it got fully charged in 2 hours. Now, what happens is this ramps up very quickly. So if you have a smartphone that charges, rapid charges early on, you'll know that it's dumping more power up front. So in the case of the River Pro here, I saw a maximum input wattage of 654. Now on paper, it does a little better than that, but that's what I was getting from here. So within an hour, I had 91%. 2 hours, I got fully charged because it dropped off after it got to full. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to know with that is, well, obviously if it's supercharging it, it's gonna get warm. So I checked the temperature on the other side where the fan was and was getting about 148 degrees internal temperature. Body temperature was about 90, where it was closer where the actual batteries were. So either way, that's not going to be terrible. You don't have to worry about burning anything or heating up anything that's by this. Just again, data points so that you know. Now, if you are solar charging this, and I tested solar charging this via the EcoFlow 110 watt solar panel that I picked up in mid to late spring, so I wasn't actually in the summertime getting 100% great sun. I was able to get a maximum input from the solar panel of about 95 watts, depending on how I was angling things, and I charge from 1% all the way up to 85% in about 7 hours. Now, I know that sounds like it's a long time, and it is, but also consider that I was not testing this in summertime where you get 100% maximum sun, and that's all free. That's what the big thing with this is. You have a solar generator, one of the taglines they like to say, and that is free power that you are bringing into the device. You don't have to pay for that. As we're talking about charging the battery for the EcoFlow RIVER Pro here, you can get up to 800 power cycles, so completely draining it, well, 10% draining, and then charging back up to 80%. 800 cycles isn't bad for something like this, especially if you're mainly using this for when you're going out and about and don't have access to power, or if you're using it as a backup when you lose power. One of the other things to consider, can I charge the River Pro and use it at the same time? That's known as pass-through charging. Yes, you can, so you can plug something in and charge this at the same time. Input, output will dynamically change based on how much your device is drawing versus charging. Overall, the River Pro, in my opinion, is a very good portable power station. EcoFlow does make slightly larger with slightly better maximum watt output power stations. However, if you're looking for something that's lightweight, easy to bring with you somewhere or to store, the River Pro is a great choice. The one hindrance with things like this is the price tag, and I'm not going to lie. The EcoFlow product line are going to be more expensive than some of their competitors. However, this display and the fact in this case that this one is expandable make it worth that price tag, in my opinion. Only you can know for sure if the amount of money is acceptable for you, but in my case, I looked at several other brands, you probably have too, and for me, EcoFlow performed above and beyond my expectations. And I know it will for you, which is why I highly recommend the EcoFlow RIVER Pro portable power station solar generator. With that being said, I have been Wanderer 001. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the area below. And as always, thanks for watching.
If you found this video helpful, consider giving it a like, as that will help other people find the video as well. If you like what I'm doing here, you can always help fuel the next review by buying me a coffee, link in the description below. Last but not least, if you want to be notified when I upload a new video, you know what to do.